Fallout 3 was the first Fallout game that many people got to play. The original games have aged quite a lot and don't fit into a mainstream way of making games. They are good though, and Fallout 3 is fine. It's not a bad game, but it was the beginning of an end, wasn't it? And Fallout 4 was the next step toward that end and a new beginning. But why? Part 1. Vibes, visuals, and style. When it comes to Fallout, there are many places you can put your focus. The first game established a specific tone and general vibe with its retro-futuristic aesthetics, and world that took from post-war Americana with its fixation on capitalistic excess, advertising, and patriotism, and blended it all with a robust role-playing system. The second game expanded on some of that gameplay stuff, such as elevating speech to an even greater extent, and allowing you to go on a no-kill run of the game, except for the very end. While the fictional world progressed further and became less of a post-apocalyptic nightmare as actual civilization and development came to be more prominent, such as with the growth of the NCR. The way Noah Caldwell-Gervais characterized it in his lengthy video essay on the Fallout franchise is that the first game was the post-apocalyptic wasteland, and the second game was the frontier. Things were changing, improving, the old threats were no longer threats, and new, more sophisticated threats began to take root. The third game went back to the wasteland style. Everything is terrible, everyone is living amidst rubble, no one bothers to sweep anything, and even the richest people live in a place that is barely cleaner than the wasteland right outside. It was lazy. We all got a bit of a glimmer of hope when Fallout New Vegas came out and there was more societal development and sophisticated threats on the horizon. But then Fallout 4 just reset it again. The thing is, it's all about aesthetics. The Bethesda attempts the Fallout property, that is. The third game, which is the first with Bethesda at the helm, attempts to copy the aesthetics of the first two games without truly grasping either of them. This becomes even more the case in Fallout 4. It's all about the aesthetics of this world and to an even greater extent than before, for reasons that we will chat about. This is a post-apocalyptic first-person shooter with RPG elements that is casually wearing the mask of Fallout. That mask is all advertising-centric fixations with robots being treated like consumer goods and patriotic messages here and there, but there is no desire to truly explore any of these concepts. Nothing is brave enough to delve into the things that it is touching upon because that could alienate some people. Fallout New Vegas was quite willing to alienate, with every option basically being some form of bad. And your choice was to go for the least bad option from your perspective. Or to just say, screw it to all that and side with Caesar's Legion while pretending that that fascistic regime isn't also doomed to crumble the second its charismatic leader is gone. Fallout 4 enjoys the surface level. It attempts to add some new stuff to the Fallout formula, stuff that doesn't really work or add much, such as settlement construction. But what it really wants is to be a different, less confrontational world and narrative while wearing the familiar and entertaining mask of better Fallout games. The improved weapon mechanics, the streamlined dialogue system, the weakened questing, all point toward a future that is decidedly not Fallout while looking like it. Basically, there is a natural generational progression here. We started out with the old games as top-down CRPGs. They are sophisticated and often complicated, but also subversive and ideologically confrontational. The third game just wanted the aesthetics, but it understood that a fleshed-out dialogue system and more RPG elements were desirable to a Fallout audience. New Vegas blended old with new and even figured out how to make an open-world game feel like it has stakes. Then Fallout 4 backtracked and stripped out a lot of it in its pursuit of being a more mainstream experience. The natural progression from there is just Fallout 76. Take all the junk collecting minimalistic narrative and settlement stuff wrapped up in a pretty Fallout themed package and you get Fallout 76. I know the game has more narrative elements now after fans got angry at it, but the original release was the desirable release in Bethesda's eyes. They didn't want something sophisticated, they wanted an endless game that wasn't particularly deep, but could be continuously played. They wanted another Skyrim, but even more optimized for mainstream appeal, which ironically alienated a lot of people. This all shows that Fallout 4 is basically the blueprint for that shift. You could also argue that Fallout 3 is that blueprint, but that game is too beholden to the original games to truly serve as the template for the streamlined games they wanted to make. Fallout 4 ramped up the combat, removed narrative elements, increased explorative aspects, and dialed up resource management. It's the kind of thing that feels like it was made in a lab to be optimized for the highest number of players while being truly beloved by very few. Basically, it feels like it's meant to be fine to everyone, but not truly great for anyone. Fallout 4 is not like any of the earlier mainline Fallout games. It isn't trying to be something on its own. It's a transitional product aimed at a highly general audience. And in many ways, Bethesda very much succeeded in creating just that. They produced a very successful product here. So let's have a look at it for all it tried to be. But before all that, a public service announcement. I use money to eat food. It's one of the primary ways in which I survive in this world. Food is easier to acquire when I do have some money. So, if you enjoy my stuff, check out my Patreon and or my books. Maybe you'll like that stuff. Anyway, let's get back to it. Part 2. The Promise of Greatness. So, what did Fallout 4 try to be? Firstly, it's impossible not to see Fallout 4 in the aftermath of Bethesda's massive runaway success that came out only several years beforehand. That runaway success was Skyrim. When we have a look at Fallout 3 and Bethesda's relationship to it, it can also be seen as a response of sorts to Oblivion. When Oblivion released, it brought the Elder Scrolls into a far more mainstream space. The previous Elder Scrolls game, Morrowind, is from a stronger PC tradition, which started to be eroded through later releases. Once Oblivion released to that greater mainstream success, there was Fallout 3 on the horizon. Oblivion had already simplified RPG gameplay into the action RPG realm, and Fallout 3 followed in those footsteps. The next step on that journey was the success that Fallout 3 brought to Bethesda, thereby cementing Fallout as a mainstream game too. Because the first two Fallout games, while influential and successful in their own right, were definitely not successes in the mainstream. They're too PC-focused, too specific, too tough, too unyielding, and Fallout 3 smoothed over those rough patches. Then came Skyrim, the success of all successes that Bethesda has never been able to emulate in quite the same way ever since. However, the hype from Skyrim persisted into the marketing of Fallout 4. It was a new Fallout game, and it was from a post-Skyrim Bethesda. They had more resources than ever before, and they made quite a showing of things. It was 2015. Bethesda decided to do their very first E3 press conference. They had grown in the intervening years, they were now a powerhouse, and they had games other than a new Fallout or Elder Scrolls on the horizon. They had Wolfenstein and Doom to show off, but their main showing was focused on Fallout 4. The presentation received quite a lot of attention, and that attention was positive. People were even excited about the settlement and crafting mechanics. Oh, such innocent children they were. I even distinctly remember being excited during that press conference. I, in the lead up to the release of Fallout 4, got myself the full collection. I played through Fallout 1 and 2, and then I tried Fallout Tactics. Anyway, then I replayed 3 and New Vegas. Those were my introductions, so replaying them with the full context of what had come before was a very enlightening experience. Then, all I had to do was wait for Fallout 4 to release. I pre-ordered it, I got it on day 1. The whole game was not on the disc that I purchased, the rest had to be downloaded. This was 2015 in South Africa in a mostly rural area, so I played Fallout the following day. Downloading about 20 gigabytes was a little rough on my sad little internet connection. The promise was finally here. Dogmeat was cool. The heavily publicized mechanic that Codsworth would be able to say your name didn't work. My chosen name was apparently not on the list of thousands of names they'd recorded. and my system couldn't run it properly. Still played about 90 hours and then probably forgot all about 4 quests. Enjoyable, time-wasting, and mostly forgettable. It was fine. The presentation had not lied. It had simply shown a new vision for Fallout. One where story didn't matter as much, and that was disappointing. However, it was enjoyable enough as an experience. Many did not think quite like me. There was backlash and a lot of hate. Then things died down. Now, people remember Fallout 4 more fondly, for the most part, but pretty much everyone agrees that New Vegas is better. That is probably the legacy of Fallout 4. It's fine. The promise of something great didn't come to pass, but it made a lot of money. Money is nice, it made money. I distinctly remember a news story about it selling 12 million copies. That's a whole lot of copies. But it was all a primer. Fallout 76 was on the horizon. No one liked that thing when it came out, but you can see the tendrils of influence that began with Fallout 4's release. The promise may not have led to what many wanted, but this is the game we got. It is now 10 years old, so let's see what it did, where it led, and what it may still lead to. Because Starfield released not that long ago, and, well, let's just say that Bethesda hasn't, had a truly runaway hit since 2011. So let's have a look at their attempt at another Skyrim success, and what it did. Part 3, Gameplay Upgrades and Downgrades. With all that promise of greatness, what did we get? Well, we got a game. We didn't really get much of a Fallout game, but we did get something. The most immediately noticeable change is in the second-to-second combat gameplay. Fallout 4 went a very different path from the original isometric Fallout games and intensified the action aspect of the first 2 3D entries. While 3 and New Vegas went in an RPG from a first-person shooter perspective direction, 4 went toward a first-person shooter experience with RPG elements. Sort of. Not really. With Fallout 4, we find the true beginnings of the franchise being a shooter. This isn't something unexpected, though. It isn't like it was wild to think they would do something like what they did with 4. Because this kind of gameplay does feel like a natural progression of what they started doing with Fallout 3. The immediate change, as stated, is that Fallout 4 does have more enjoyable second-to-second combat gameplay. The guns are more responsive, and the enemies more enjoyable to fight. This approach means that the game became more action-oriented with a lot less role-playing, such as through the use of, responsive enemy AI that go for cover if they're human versus having an array of different movesets for other creatures, such as, ghouls acting more like speedy zombies with their lunges and rolls, or mole rats burrowing underground to come up for attack or hiding from the player to move around the arena more effectively. I would call these kinds of additions to the general gameplay something welcome. I would also say that a dedicated melee attack button is also welcome and understandable. However, with this came other decisions that weaken this kind of combat upgrade. That lies in the greater use of simplification. The variety available to players in games like New Vegas, where you could have different ammo types, deal with weapon degradation, and handle foes of different strengths and weaknesses, gives way to a more uniform and dumbed down approach to the game's combat. This makes the game a whole lot more accessible, and so the decision to do it does make sense. But it also means that there is less of a role-playing option here. There are fewer options to truly be your own character who fights in their own way. It's all just the same. That does still exist too, and I would say that remains functionally unchanged from Fallout 3 and New Vegas. The whole slowdown of enemies, the choosing of different parts of the body to decide where to attack, and the cinematic camera employed give that same vibe. I'm not one much for VATS myself though, so I don't really use it. It feels more of a hindrance than anything, except for when targeting annoyingly small and or fast enemies. Like some of the flying bug types. But otherwise, VATS appears to be something that Bethesda figured out, with 3 and just left mostly unchanged, and I think it works well. However, while VATS was not exactly dumbed down any further than it already was, a different kind of gameplay that was massively streamlined is dialogue. The first 2 Fallout games, as well as New Vegas, and to a lesser extent 3, make fantastic use of dialogue. I would definitely call it one of the defining traits of Fallout as a franchise, which seemingly didn't stop Bethesda from excising it as much as possible from Fallout 4. I would personally consider this to be the biggest downgrade that Fallout 4 has. While the combat gameplay got a more exciting upgrade while being streamlined, the dialogue was gutted. The entire dialogue system, especially the ways in which New Vegas massively expanded on it by making, non-speech skills into dialogue options, has been rendered into, at most, 4 responses. The reason is obvious for this. It was made with a console control scheme in mind, 4 options to correspond to 4 directional or face buttons. The original approach, as seen in every other Fallout game, as well as pretty much every game with strong dialogue options available, is a list-based approach. The list may not be particularly aesthetically appealing to look at, because it has a rather clumsy interface and simply doesn't look good, but it has functionality that exists beyond its weaker aesthetics. It also allowed you to know exactly what you were going to say. In Fallout 4, you may have an option that says something like, sarcastic, and that could mean a lot of different things. I don't know what exactly I'm going to say when all it says is sarcastic. Does it mean mean sarcastic or playful sarcastic? Am I going to sound rude or like I'm making a joke? Not that it really matters in the game, because your relationship with characters doesn't matter anywhere near as much now that dialogue has been so heavily cut down. The list approach is not perfect, and we know that it was to create a better console experience, but I first played Fallout 3 and New Vegas on a PS3, and guess what? The list worked just fine. The list approach may be a bit annoying to cycle through, but it is actually fine. Bethesda simply wanted to go for a more simplified approach. They did the same with the combat, but I personally feel that it's a lot less welcome when it comes to dialogue than combat gameplay. Although it is also worth stating that the whole simplification of dialogue thing is not necessarily simply because it runs better on a console if you do it that way, but it's also because of a presentational issue. They wanted to, for the first time, have a fully voiced protagonist. Our main character, the sole survivor, has a voice in 4, and that means that there is a monetary reason for a weaker dialogue system. It's easy to add in a hell of a lot of dialogue when none of it is voiced, but once you need to pay voice actors to say all those lines, it becomes a lot more than that. And having a male and female voice available to the player means needing to re-record everything the protagonist says twice. It's a lot of money to throw away on something like this. Text is cheap. Voice acting is not. This is also actually why games that have a huge amount of dialogue with loads of different options are usually not voiced. And it's also why when of those kinds of games is fully voiced, it instantly hits everyone as a work of immense effort. Think about something like Baldur's Gate 3 and Disco Elysium. They have so much dialogue and every line is voiced. That is impressive to players, but daunting to a developer. So Fallout 4 having a comparatively minimized amount of dialogue is understandable. That understandability doesn't change the effect it has on the game though. Fallout 4's dialogue gameplay is very weak. It feels like a betrayal of the legacy of the franchise. They have always focused on dialogue as a central gameplay element. The thing is that people tend to view dialogue as solely connected with story, while being disconnected from gameplay as we typically understand it. However, the means through which you interact with that story is a major component of gameplay that many don't truly view as gameplay in the same sense as the shooting. However, the way in which you engage with the story is a gameplay concept, and it is simply less enjoyable than it was in other games in the same franchise. It is fun to go through the list of dialogue options in the first 2 Fallout games to try and, figure out how to optimize your interaction with whichever person you're talking to. And that enjoyment is absent from Fallout 4. No dialogue interaction can truly feel like it has variability when you only have, at most, 4 things to say to someone. It's disappointing and feels antithetical to what made every other Fallout game a Fallout game. Speaking of antithetical design, let's talk about settlement and crafting gameplay. You know how the other Fallout games essentially drop you into a hostile world where you're mostly alone against the deadly forces of the wasteland? Well, Fallout 4 decided that it would be a great idea to make it so that a central focus of your solitary wandering journey should be the construction and design of settlements. Take a break from your wandering, meandering journey to build some hideous houses and deck them out in bad Christmas lights or Halloween decorations. It won't detract from anything. The settlement stuff does make sense in a more thematic way because, of the existence of the Minutemen, and their plotline is oriented around turning the wasteland into a more livable place where different people help one another. However, the kind of games that are typically in the Fallout franchise do not ingratiate themselves to this sort of construction. So while it does fit with Fallout 4, it doesn't seem to much fit within the broader scope of Fallout as a whole. The strongest area in which it intermingles with older systems is when it comes to the survival gameplay. That does make more sense. You can farm, get water, have a safe place to rest, and all that jazz. But at the same time, it feels like it breaks some of the point behind survival gameplay. The whole purpose of survival gameplay is to have limited means of survival while needing to scope out safe places and food. And so being able to simply produce all the supplies you need and dot them all over the map makes survival a lot less like actual survival. The entire settlement aspect of the game feels more like preparation for the social aspects of Fallout 76, which came along only 3 years later. And as a means of preparing us for Fallout 76 while working as a testing ground for ideas to be used in the next entry, it does make sense. It simply doesn't gel well with those who want that kind of survival gameplay to be their preferred means of playing a game ostensibly about surviving in a wasteland. However, the survival gameplay does still exist, and it goes especially well with the crafting mechanics of Fallout 4, which did become more pronounced in the jump from Fallout 3 to 4. This mode, generally called survival or hardcore mode in the Fallout franchise, is not there for someone like me. I don't like survival gameplay. However, needing to eat, drink, find shelter, and everything else makes the game a very different beast than it is when played in the normal way. The use of settlements also does make sense here. Sure, if you want a purer survival experience, the settlements make it too easy, but when needing to live off the land while finding safe places to rest, the settlements do serve as a means of creating those safe spaces. Sadly, I can't talk much on this kind of mode because it simply isn't the way I play games. I don't play any survival games, none at all. I am not the kind of masochist who enjoys anything that way. I also don't do survival horror. No, thank you. The fact that the option is there for people who want it, and the fact that Bethesda decided to integrate it into Fallout 4, as Obsidian did with New Vegas, shows an understanding of the audience they have on top of their seeming lack of understanding of their audience. The addition of settlements in a game about wandering around alone, and our protagonist's title as the sole survivor lending more credence to the lonesomeness, makes those settlements make less and less sense on a thematic level. But hey, on a gameplay level, you do get to make some ugly post-apocalyptic towns that look no better than every other post-apocalyptic town Bethesda has tried to create. Okay, but we're done with that nonsense now, and so I want to talk about where I actually think Fallout 4 shines. Sure, the combat gameplay is an upgrade, the dialogue is a downgrade, the settlement stuff is a downgrade, and the survival stuff is, depending on who you are, either an upgrade or a downgrade. But the thing I consider to be the greatest gameplay upgrade of them all lies in its exploration gameplay. The exploration, which I would describe as low interaction exploration, is great in Fallout 4. By this term, low interaction exploration, I mean the way in which the world gives you a large and busy space where nothing really allows you to interact with it in a way outside of simple combat. So you can find lots of nice looking spaces with some point of interest worth a few moments of perusal, but then nothing happens there, and you just move on. It's also why environmental storytelling reigns supreme in Fallout 4. When I say that, though, I don't mean that Fallout 4 has the best environmental storytelling, because it does not by any measure have the best, but it's the best storytelling you'll find within Fallout 4. This kind of low interaction exploration certainly did also exist in Fallout 3 and New Vegas, but a lot of the landscapes were quite bare and barren a lot of the time. And Fallout 4 feels a lot more stuffed with stuff. The world itself may be larger than the others, but it feels smaller and denser. You won't be running through nothingness for extended periods, because there will always be something to catch your eye and make you stop for a while. However, these things are simply to be seen and never interacted with. Fallout New Vegas was a lot better at producing a kind of high interaction exploration, because there could always be some small random quest around any corner. But Fallout 4 will give you some interesting corners that stop you for a while and then set you on your way again. Basically, the world itself feels more tightly focused than those found in 3 and New Vegas, even if it is a lot less so in real terms. Once again, it's all about the aesthetics of the thing rather than the thing itself. This means that Fallout 4 is best when viewed as meandering fun, or at least the way I see it. Because it's kind of like a walking simulator with the occasional need to stop and shoot at something. Come and see some of the beautiful post-apocalyptic features on display, and then move on, because it's all a museum here. You can look, but you can never touch. In addition, one of the great things that Fallout 4 has over all of its predecessors is the use of verticality. You are constantly able to climb atop buildings and other large structures, and one of the best ways to experience that verticality is in power armor. When you have power armor equipped with a jetpack, you can get up high a lot easier and properly explore the city from the often occupied rooftops of the Boston environment. Now, a lot of people will immediately criticize the specific way that Bethesda changed how power armor works. Yes, power armor was always more of a late game armor upgrade that required, special training to utilize. And in Fallout 4 you receive power armor near the beginning, but I will defend the new use of power armor here. It essentially serves as a tank. It changes the dynamic of play. I would also say that since the 3D switchover, it's the first time that the use of power armor truly feels significant. The way it can also do things like offer you an air supply for underwater or protect you from radiation means that power armor gains new gameplay elements that set it far apart from every other use of power armor. Yes, it is something new, but it's also a valuable addition that allows for something fresh to be breathed into things. And, to be honest, Bethesda hasn't been great at breathing fresh life into the Fallout franchise. So at least they did it this time around. And in terms of low interaction exploration, the power armor stands firm as a fantastic addition. In terms of verticality, it is amazing, but one of the best places to demonstrate how power armor makes things better is in the glowing sea. This area is where the bombs fell, and it is highly irradiated. You need either power armor, a lot of Rad-X, or a radiation suit to safely traverse it. And the high-level enemies mean that power armor really is the best thing to use here. The landscape is the purest distillation of Fallout 4's dedication to low interaction exploration. It is a hostile landscape with very little to actually do other than wander around and look at things. There isn't a lot to look at in the glowing sea, but it is a phenomenal visual experience. It feels so different to everything else. It feels otherworldly and distinct. This also means that the low interactivity can bring strong narrative moments to the player. The glowing sea is a good example of this. There is little to do and it's essentially all about aesthetics. But it presents us with a narratively justified and devastated landscape. We can understand it. However, the low interaction exploration also presents problems to us when it comes to the narrative of the game. Look at locations like the General Atomics Galleria or the racetrack. The General Atomics Galleria is a location filled with robots acting as if the bombs never fell. They are all preparing for the opening of this tourist spot. You can get them to commence the grand opening and then... nothing. You hardly interact and then you have a pretty place to go, but nothing else. The racetrack is similar. It's a place that appears to be a racetrack where robots are racing each other. And so you might think that it could be a spot to place some bets and meet some interesting people, but nope, it's just some raiders and nothing else. It's all a disappointment. That is a word that is important to keep in mind here. While the low interaction exploration can be enjoyable, it is also indicative of a disappointing world as a whole. Lots to see, little to do. It's enough to whet your appetite and get you wanting more, but there was no point in wanting more because there is nothing more. It all looks and feels good, but then it isn't. It's just another place to go where nothing happens. It's also almost as if this kind of low interactivity in the general explorative gameplay of Fallout 4 translates into other parts of the game or something. I mean, you know. Part 4. It does have a narrative, I suppose. Fallout 4, like Fallout 3, aka the other Bethesda Fallout game, also entails a search for some member of your family. There are stakes involved. There is also a preferred time frame involved in this whole situation too. In Fallout 3, you are a vault dweller whose dad decides to leave, so you then decide to leave too, so that you can chase him down. This is kind of important. You would think that a missing parent who vanished into the post-apocalyptic wasteland would be something important to you, but you instead probably faff around a bit, explore some places, shoot some things, and so on. Fallout 4 does something similar, and, much like with Fallout 3, it attempts to ingratiate you toward your missing person. In this case, the game's opening acts as a calm before the storm. You get to see the world prior to its nuclear collapse. You and your partner are living a life of domestic bliss. You're in the suburbs, you have a kid, and then the bombs go off. All is supposed to be good. Ignoring the fact that the prior games in the Fallout franchise have been more critical of the society that led to the destruction of the world, and this looks like a pretty decent place to live, provided, of course, you have the cozy middle-class life of these particular characters. You're then evacuated to a vault that cryogenically freezes you, and you get woken up at some point in time to watch your partner get offed and your baby get kidnapped. This means that the central narrative of Fallout 4 is a combination of a desperate search for a missing child and revenge. Revenge is a narrative construction that can allow for a slow burn. The reason, of course, being that there isn't really a time limit to revenge. You just need to do the deed to the one who serves as the source of your vengeance. The pursuit of a missing child is quite a bit different. There isn't much room for sitting around and chilling where a missing child is concerned. And that's why it's not a very good way to organize your open world narrative. You can see and understand why Fallout 4 begins the way it does. You are supposed to care about your deceased partner and your stolen baby, even though you got all of 5 to 10 minutes with them. And this is a game, not a film. So we only actually, see our protagonist caring about the loss of their baby when an explicit set of baby-centric dialogue appears over the course of the game. Otherwise, it's just whatever is happening around you. It would have made more sense, provided the old style of dialogue still persisted, to allow you to ask literally anyone about your missing baby. That would have worked a lot better for an open world setting. But that very setting is where the problem lies. They try to make you care about your baby and partner, but as soon as the game properly starts, you have access to a large open world map with a lot of stuff to do. This is not some problem unique to the Bethesda entries in Fallout though, because this is a problem in the earlier games too. For instance, the first Fallout game sets you off to find a new water chip for your vault, and the whole vault will perish if you don't do that in time. So, the way the first game dealt with this problem was to give you a literal timer. The problem there is that it detracts from the game as a whole. You can no longer feel comfortable exploring the world because you have a time constraint the entire time. Fallout New Vegas solved this in a much better way. Your central personal narrative is one of vengeance, which, as we've already said, doesn't feel like one that has fundamental time constraints built into it. You have time to find your nemesis and put an end to him. And in the meantime, the political background of the world unfolds around you and allows you to take the time you need for it because it feels like most of what you do contributes to your ultimate ending. Fallout 4 completely ignored the lessons of New Vegas and tried to give you an urgent mission right from the get-go that could then be easily ignored. It does not work. This is also not a unique observation, as everyone considers this an issue with the whole Sean narrative. Your baby, Sean, goes missing and is stolen by a vicious killer, Kellogg, and you don't know where he is. So let's putter around and explore another random location that couldn't possibly have anything to do with our missing kid. Basically, it does not work. The non-linear design of the world and the linear design of the central narrative do not blend well together. As I have said, New Vegas thwarted this problem by making all the different missions of the game essentially come down to the big battle at the end. Everything you do contributes to the admiration or hatred you receive from the different factions who can help you in the Battle of Hoover Dam. Everything contributes to that single ultimate destination. Fallout 4 is incapable of achieving the same kind of narrative consistency. The stakes are all over the place. The urgency is maintained for much of the central narrative, and eventually dropped without much of a worthwhile place to go from there. And while the game's narrative does structurally improve after you find your kid, it just doesn't work as well as it could have if it had been more carefully designed. All of these issues to do with the pacing and structure of the central narrative lead to other problems, such as the issue with our protagonist now having a forced backstory. The protagonist in every Fallout game has a backstory of some kind, but it is not necessarily all that intrusive. For instance, the first game has you playing a vault dweller who has never seen the outside world at all, and so any experiences from inside the vault are likely valueless. You could say something similar about Fallout 3, except that there is the whole dad of it all. Fallout 2 has you being the chosen one of a tribe, but in a similar sense, your tribal identity is unrelated to the wider wasteland, and so it does not have much bearing on you. Even New Vegas' courier, who definitely has a backstory, only really gets to explore it in the final DLC. And that DLC's narrative is about confronting unknowable actions that you have made as a person. It has narrative weight that Fallout 4 cannot even consider. When it comes to our protagonist or protagonists in Fallout 4, we have two to choose from. You can choose their names, but whichever you choose, the other will have a specific name, which means they do already have names, but whatever. Nate is the male option and Nora is the female option. Nate was a soldier during the war that led to the end of the world, and so there is a built-in justification for his capabilities in the wasteland as a whole. He has actual military training, so we could even say that our protagonist being so physically capable makes a lot more sense. Except that Nora is a lawyer. Why is she so capable? If they just made the pair of them soldiers, that would have made it make a lot more sense. But instead of sense, they gave them contradictory backstories that allow for the male to be understandable and the female to make no sense. This also causes issues with the lore. One of the major things about power armor is that it requires special training to use. So, Nate being able to immediately use power armor does actually make a lot of sense. He's likely used power armor before, so using it now changes nothing. Only problem there is Nora. How did she learn to use power armor? It's basically a portable tank. The reason people can't just use power armor is that it is a sophisticated piece of technology, but Nora can use it for some reason. And even though this has no actual bearing on the game, Emil Pagliarulo, not sure how to pronounce it, I apologize, the lead writer for Fallout 4 decided to tweet out a fun little factoid. The fact isn't something canon from within the game, and so I reckon we can death of the author this and ignore it, but it is still funny. The dedication to using the aesthetics of the previous games without understanding them is in full swing here, because this factoid is about how Nate, our hero, is the soldier who nods to the camera in the opening of the first Fallout. Isn't that fun? See, our protagonist was there in the beginning. He was always there. Isn't that cute? Except that this is what the full section of that intro looks like. The guy stands next to his buddy who executes a prisoner of war, and they both laugh about it. So, Mr. Pagliarulo decided that it would be a fun little fact to tell us that Nate, our supposed hero, is a war criminal. There is inherent danger in trying to emulate previous entries in a franchise when making your own, especially when you don't understand what those previous games were doing. Fallout 1 was criticizing the military. Fallout 4 is attempting to valorize it. However, these are just the issues with the protagonist and their personal journey. It is far from the only problem with the narrative presentation of Fallout 4. You see, the world of Fallout 4 is one that is filled with factions, and this is actually something kind of great. They ditched factional gameplay when they made Fallout 3, but the success of New Vegas may have shifted their hand a little. Having factions that were worth exploring has been a thing since Fallout 2, and you can see that Bethesda is trying here. It must also kind of suck that everyone keeps calling New Vegas a game you didn't make, but merely commissioned another company to make, one of the best written games of all time. You want a piece of that action too! Enter the factional conflict between the Brotherhood, Railroad, Institute, and Minutemen. This assortment of factions is worthwhile, but lacks the cohesion of something like New Vegas. In New Vegas, every major faction wants the same thing. They all want control of Hoover Dam. For the NCR, it's to expand and claim New Vegas, and for Caesar's Legion, it's to, expand and claim New Vegas. For Mr. House, it's to keep New Vegas independent, and the independent option is to keep New Vegas even more independent, but without Mr. House's control. In Fallout 4, the Brotherhood wants to destroy the Institute because they have technology that they shouldn't have. Okay. The Institute wants to continue to operate and eventually expand. They are essentially defending themselves from Brotherhood aggression. But even without Brotherhood aggression, they still want more control over the Commonwealth as a whole. The Railroad wants to free sentient synths. They're literally just trying to free slaves. They have no actual beef with the Brotherhood or the Institute. Destroying the Institute would mean ending the lives of many sentient beings. They don't ideologically want that. They pretty much just want them to be more ethical. The Minutemen don't really want any conflict. They just want unity for the people of the Commonwealth and would prefer lack of aggression. They will fight if needed, but you can see it's not what they want. So none of them really have shared goals? There is no real need for any kind of factional conflict here. It's literally just the Brotherhood's aggression that is an issue here. Most of these factions are also completely or mostly new. Technically, the Institute and Railroad were in Fallout 3 because there is an escaped synth that forms part of one side quest. Otherwise, they are new. The only returning group is the Brotherhood of Steel, and I'd say that their motivations have become stronger between Fallout 3 and 4. The Brotherhood was never a good faction, but they weren't evil. They were mostly misguided and had their own morality. In Fallout 3, they became generic good guys, essentially serving as knights defending the wasteland. In New Vegas, they were more in keeping with their presence in 1 and 2, and 4 decides to maintain that by making them more militaristic, fascistic, colonial organization hell-bent on their own goals to the detriment of pretty much everyone else. The only problem is that while I feel they are an improvement over their presence in Fallout 3, Bethesda is still beholden to their own depiction of the Brotherhood from the third game. They just used Liberty Prime again. It's the same old thing that was already kind of dull in Fallout 3. The only really interesting thing about Liberty Prime is having to side against it if you choose the other factions, which was not an option in Fallout 3. In the end, your options for who to choose between these factions says a lot less about you than the choice of faction in New Vegas. Do you go with the communalist good guys who are just trying to protect the local people? The techno-fascists who want to control everyone else, the other techno-fascists who also want to control everyone else, or the group who are literally only interested in helping synths and so their bearing on the lives of everyone else in the Commonwealth is negligible? It's a pretty weak choice. Every option is either bad or underdeveloped. For an example of that underdevelopment, you may notice that the Brotherhood of Steel's rejection of ghouls is part of their narrow-minded viewpoint that makes sense in their world. But you've also interacted with ghouls and know that they are not lesser beings in any sense. And so as a form of sci-fi discrimination it works, but you, as the player, can't truly embrace it because you aren't from this world. You cannot accept it. Each of these groups has some good points and some bad points. But none of them are particularly interesting or thought-provoking on what they are trying to do. People genuinely argue over whether it would be best to go independent or side with the NCR in New Vegas. Does anyone argue over who is actually best in Fallout 4, or are they all different brands of pointless? Now, when I call them pointless, I don't actually mean that in the sense of their place within the world. Different groups do not need to be vying for the same thing. There's a reason that in the real world, chess clubs and charities are both able to exist as organizations as a general category, despite having vastly different goals and ideas. The same is true of political organizations, which is what these different factions functionally are. The thing that makes them pointless in terms of a game is how they are all given the central space within the primary narrative as if they do have similar goals. The ultimate ending of the game generally involves the wholesale destruction of the Institute or the Brotherhood of Steel. But the Minutemen do not actually philosophically require either of those things. So if you side with either the Brotherhood or the Institute, you simply have to destroy the other and the Minutemen are ignored. You have to specifically side with the Minutemen for them to even have a role in the destruction of a larger faction. This indicates that they are not very beneficial as factions within a game. However, within the world, disconnected from us as players, these factions can work. Each has their own goals in mind. The Railroad is attempting to operate within the parameters of the Institute's existence. They should not be attempting to destroy them. That should never be an explicit goal. To destroy them would be to destroy the synths, all the synths, including the means to produce more synths. So while the Institute is the enemy of the Railroad does not necessarily need to be the enemy of the Institute. In the world of Fallout, both of these factions can readily exist. The same is true of the Minutemen. They serve as unifiers of the wasteland, and that kind of altruistic group is one that is generally lacking in Fallout as a whole. There are factions like the Followers of the Apocalypse that serve altruistic means, but it has many issues of its own and doesn't pretend to be an actual faction with genuine power. The Minutemen are very useful as being a kind of new version of how the Brotherhood was depicted in Fallout 3. In Fallout 3, the Brotherhood was just a good guy group, and that didn't really work in relation to their prior depiction. And that's why I do like the changes that were made to them in Fallout 4. In the first game, the Brotherhood mostly saw you as a necessity, and they weren't really your true friends. By the time New Vegas came along, the Brotherhood's dedication to isolationist policies and a fundamentalist zeal to their own goals led them to become a fractured group that hardly served as a threat to anyone. In Fallout 4, they have reformed much of their strength and begun a more colonial-style move to annihilate what could be a threat without any recourse to dialogue or nuanced thought. In my opinion, this works as a depiction of the Brotherhood of Steel. They are militaristic, narrow-minded, and utterly unwilling to compromise. That works for them. So, I would say that Fallout 4's depiction of the Brotherhood is a valuable one. It makes a lot more sense than their goody-two-shoes routine from Fallout 3. This leaves us with the Institute. This is the only truly new and unique faction introduced in Fallout 4. The Minutemen is just a lazy, neutral option, and the Railroad is fundamentally tied to the Institute's existence. That gives us only the Institute as a truly new option. They are also a rather good faction, and their presence makes sense. The only problem to me is that I do not feel that the connection between their internal and external existence is explored in much depth. The Institute is characterized as a boogeyman of the Commonwealth. They steal people and replace them with identical robots. They are technologically advanced, yet have no base that anyone can find. They are resourceful, intelligent, and brutal. They even hire homicidal maniacs who they technologically enhance to ensure longevity. Then you get into the Institute itself, and they are all pretty nice people. None of them appear capable of ordering what their synths do in their name on the surface. There is a strong disconnect here, isn't there? Choosing to join or destroy the Institute feels unfulfilling. Their motivations are weaker, and so there is a sense that there should be a way to bring them and the other factions together, but there is a simplistic refusal to do so. When it comes to a group like Caesar's Legion, you know why the only way to truly stop them is to violently put a halt to their plans. They are fascists. They will not stop until they're broken apart and have no hope of victory. This isn't the case with any of the factions in Fallout 4. They are all the type of organizations that seem like they should be willing to sit down and have a meeting, but they just won't, no matter what. The factions and their stories in Fallout 4 are weak. They are half-baked and poorly constructed. They are not interested in trying to make you think about who would actually be best. Bethesda didn't learn much from New Vegas, did they? The other fundamental issue is that there is no real factional affinity system here. Instead of that, we have a series of missions for each faction, and it doesn't really matter what you do between missions because who cares? The only real people who care about what you actually do are your companions. And the companion affinity system is a far stronger way of approaching the interpersonal than the factions can hope to accomplish. Part 5. Companions and their desires. One of the problems that I've always had with some factional relationship mechanics in games is what appears to be the telepathic capabilities of the factions. Why is it that if I sneakily do something against a certain faction, they somehow know that I have done that thing to them? It has always felt like a bit of a problem in general design that the devs never thought of it before or bothered to consider that leaving no witnesses means that no one could possibly inform the faction of what you've done. This is obviously a bit of a pointless complaint. We all know the reason that things don't make quite as much sense as they should if they were in the real world. And that's because it's a game. Pretty simple, really. This is a video game, and the developers cannot possibly plan and code for everything. And having specific mechanics in place to deal with highly specific issues is the dream, but it also isn't very likely to come true. That's why we need to be happy with what we get, even if what we get doesn't make sense. However, this problem with factions is, in my opinion, more cleverly sidestepped in Fallout 4. And I consider it to be the strongest part of the narrative of this game. You don't really have factional relationships like you do in New Vegas, and that's because you can play around with all the factions until a point of no return in the narrative. That point comes late in the central narrative, meaning that only the big things truly affect your relationship with factions. They are not even aware of your individual actions, but there is a mechanic for dealing with moment-to-moment actions, and that is the use of companions. Whenever a companion is physically with you, they will respond to your actions and say things that are appropriate to that specific event. This also leads to an affinity system with them where they can like or dislike you based on the things you do. One of the great little details here is that it is based on proximity and not if they're simply traveling with you. You can dismiss a companion or happen to have them nearby when making a decision and they will respond to it. I have, for instance, made decisions in a settlement while with one companion, but because another companion happened to be nearby and living in that settlement, that off-duty companion also responded. This proximity aspect of the companion behavior works well because it's very real. You can only really respond to the individual actions of your friends when you are with them, and so if they do something good or bad outside of your presence, you won't exactly be able to respond to it. The basic idea here is that companions exist in the game to join you on your quests and exploration and to then serve several purposes as a companion. At the basic gameplay level, their purpose is to help you with fighting and to sometimes use their unique skills to do something, such as a medicine-oriented companion giving you healing items. However, they are also there to flesh out the world of Fallout. Every companion has their perspective, their own lived experience, their own desires, likes and dislikes. Some of them will contribute to specific dialogue branches and even respond to specific choices. For instance, there could be choices that involve helping or refusing to help regular people, and both of these choices will either be liked or disliked depending on who the companion is. The same is true with actions like lockpicking, hacking or stealing, some like, some dislike. As you do things your companions like, you get a higher affinity with them, and that means more options with them. Once you reach higher levels of affinity, they will confide more and more in you. They may start to tell you about their pasts or their thoughts and feelings. You learn more about them and begin to befriend them. There is also the option to romance some of your companions. However, the narrative reward for all this affinity raising is that you will ultimately receive a unique companion quest from them. These companion quests involve something specific to each of the companions, such as a personal problem from their past or a present struggle that they've been too closed off to seek help for until you gave them someone to trust. The quests themselves are much more personal to these characters, and it allows them to be more fleshed out overall. And it's also actually why the companions are the most fleshed out thing in the game in terms of narrative. However, companion affinity and quests were also present in New Vegas, so I can't actually, hand it to Fallout 4, seeing as this isn't something new. However, it is done well, and each of the companions offers you something more intimate and meaningful than any moment in the main narrative or most of the quests. To be honest, there also aren't many side quests that are particularly meaningful either. There are a handful, but none of them stick out as anywhere near as phenomenal as some of those found in New Vegas or even some from Fallout 3. So, companions are more dynamic and variable, and offer more in terms of replayability than the rest of the game's narrative. Seeing every companion narrative path on your first playthrough is just unlikely unless you really love playing those boring, repeatable quests and grinding for affinity points. At least it adds something to the proceedings, because there is very little in terms of different narrative paths otherwise, and that's just kind of sad. Part 6. Bethesda is good about one thing. Okay, so I've been going on about most of the bad stuff that Fallout 4 does. So, before we wrap things up, let's chat about something nice. Bethesda has always fully embraced the modding scene. They understand their PC audience, and they even understand that their console audience may appreciate some of the creature comforts of their PC brethren. There has often been support and tools provided to the audience, and a lot more than just standard support too. Bethesda has actively worked with the modding community at times, such as with the release of Creation Club editions. There are some mods that have effectively been made canon, or partially canon, in the game. There have always been criticisms of some of these kinds of official endorsements, seeing as there has been a monetary incentive for them, but non-commercialized modding has also long been something that Bethesda has happily allowed. This may not seem like something immensely special, but it gives players some level of power over the games they want to play. A lot of great things have come out of mods, from optimization and graphical improvement mods to diverse weapon and armor mods to silly mods. They have all been supported, and that is a great way that Bethesda has engaged their audience and allowed them to take some ownership of the game they played. But now that I'm done with being nice to them, let's criticize them a bit before we finish up for the day. Part 7. Fallout 76 and where it was headed. We've gone through the bad, we've gone through the good, what there is of it. However, we've somewhat danced around this for a while, but the main point of this whole thing is pretty much what Fallout 4 meant for the future of Bethesda's game design. They wanted to go in a different direction. The direction they saw on the horizon was one that incentivized repetitive payments. Microtransactions were in full swing by that point, and loot boxes were about to receive a surge in popularity. And anyone who pays attention to financial incentives would be able to see this trajectory. Bethesda wanted an MMO-type game. Not necessarily an actual MMO, but a multiplayer experience that could get recurring payments out of players. GTA Online was already a success at this point, and it made use of a smaller server design for its online functionality, so why not Fallout? The Fallout games were always based on solitude in a wasteland and or frontier environment, but Fallout 76 would be their chance to strip all the narrative weight from the franchise and focus on pure repetitive gameplay loops. The original version of the game, which I suspect is the version they truly wanted, was devoid of the life that Fallout games usually presented to the player. Bethesda released what they wanted to release. This is the conclusion of the story that they wanted to tell, but then, players revolted. Fallout fans did not appreciate what Fallout 76 was when it released. And there have since been a lot of additions to the game, additions that did not appear to be ones that Bethesda had initially planned for the game. Players may not have gotten another proper Fallout game, but they did get a better Fallout game than Bethesda wanted to provide. The tide was momentarily stopped. You could see that as a triumph of the audience over the business people, and perhaps it is. Bethesda hasn't tried an only online game since then. But market trends have also moved game development in a different direction. Either way, Fallout 4 was a test product. It was a test for a new kind of experience, one that many players did not really want. The future of Fallout is now our past. This video was released on the 10th anniversary of Fallout 4's release, and you can see where it led. That kind of design ethos is still one that the industry often pushes, but at least Fallout wasn't completely obliterated in the way that many other franchises have been over the years, or at least, not yet. Part 8. Let's just wrap this up. I have been rambling about Fallout 4 for a while now. I have mostly gone on and on about the things I criticize and how it all points towards something that is indicative of a future planned move toward a different kind of game design. However, I do still enjoy the second-to-second gameplay of Fallout 4. I enjoy the low interaction exploration. I like meandering around, doing nothing of real consequence. But while a game can simply be a way to kill some time and do nothing special, games can also try to be more. The Fallout franchise has always been something that strived to be more, and I think I just wish Fallout 4 bothered to try and be more. And hopefully you enjoyed that, whatever that was. Here's my bomb. Bomb, as they say. So this is my first sort of long form scripted video in quite some time. Hopefully you did like it. If you did like it, please tell me in the comments, because I'm thinking of doing some more stuff like this. More, not Fallout, but like retrospectives of things usually at the big years, you know. So 10, 20, 30 years old. Maybe I do the middle ones, you know, 15, 25, who knows. But if you did in general like it, then, you know, the usual stuff, the like and commenting and whatever, that stuff does help. But also, of course, Patreon helps a lot, and the bird made a noise. The Patreon helps a lot, and well, so does buying my books, or just reading them in general. You never know, maybe you'd enjoy them. And also checking out Nerd Hazard, which is another little project I have going with some friends. And yeah, that's about that. I think there's also some dogs barking in the background. I can go for a, I don't know, post-apocalyptic aesthetic. But yeah, now that we've finished with all that, let's do an extremely boring unboxing of sorts. The actual plastic like container that it came in is it broke, so I threw it away. So we just have this, which actually has a button, which used to make it go, but it takes a lot of those little watch batteries, like a bunch of them. It takes like 4 of them or something, and yeah, no, I just don't have that many of those around. I also don't know what happened to the originals. But you know, it looks like a Fat Man mini nuke. It looks like one, which is pretty cool. It also detaches. Oh, that comes off. Oh, and I've got 2 of them in here. Or was it all 3? Oh, there's 3 in here. See, a world of discovery Let's see. This will not be enough. These can't be them, can it? Can't be. Now, these are like tiny. That cannot be enough. No, it is not enough. It's not enough. But anyway, doesn't matter. It's got like a Fallout thingy written there. Whoa. But the main thing is obviously the games that it comes with. Fallout Anthology. And it's kind of cute. Right? So it's got like... Oh! It also has an advert for Doom 2016. Oh, and Dishonored 2. These are actually two games I've thought of doing long-form analyses of, seeing as they're both turning 10 next year. So, I forgot that was them. Now there's a game registration code. That's pretty cool. Alright, so what is this? Okay, well, let's... Okay, so it's for all of the... Just stuff. Go away. I don't have much reverence for tat, so I don't care. Let's start on Fallout 1. So, for each of them, you open it up, and, oh, yeah, you see it's got some art from Fallout 1, and it also has Fallout 1 disc. This is pretty cool. It's the same with Fallout 2. See, it's got some Enclave power armor on it. Plus, it's got a disc. Nothing else. There's also Fallout Tactics. Just move on from that one. And then it's got Fallout 3, Game of the Year Edition, apparently. Also with a disc, all that jazz. New Vegas Ultimate Edition with a ranger on the front. So each of these are on the disc, I believe. It's very funnily Fallout 4. So you might think, wait, this released before Fallout 4. This was like a promotional thing actually in the lead up to Fallout 4, and you'd be right. But they were kind of cute. It's got a please stand by the 10th of November 2015. Which is pretty cute. It's not a disc. It's a piece of paper. I suppose you could put your disc in here. However, I did end up getting Fallout 4 on a disc because I live in a country that didn't have good enough internet at the time. Well, not for me. For a lot of people, maybe. Not for me, though. More dogs barking. Doesn't matter. And the entire game did not come on the disc. So I had to download it anyway. The disc had like 6 or 7 gigs of the game. Back in the day, you would have multiple discs. And they'd have you install multiple discs. But not anymore. No, not anymore. I should get rid of this. I don't actually like tat. So I should get rid of this. But I'm not going to do it now. Maybe I'll give it to someone who wants it. I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of cool, but at the same time, I don't actually like tat. Even though it's kind of cool. Marketing. I've been a copywriter. Yay. Fallout.